Somewhere in your yard right now, in a place you probably haven't looked at in weeks, there's a colony of mosquitoes getting ready to hatch. Not adults yet. Larvae. Wriggling around in a puddle you forgot existed, in the bottom of a bucket, in a gutter that never quite drains, in the folds of a tarp that caught last week's rain. By the time you notice the bites, that generation has already grown up and started the next one. And here's what almost everyone does about it. They call a company, or they buy a fogger, or they grab a bottle of spray off a shelf. And that spray does kill mosquitoes. It also kills basically everything else with wings. Bees, butterflies, dragonflies, fireflies, the moths that pollinate your night-blooming flowers. You end up paying good money to wipe out the very insects your yard depends on, all in the name of getting rid of the ones you actually hate. But there's a product that costs less than a fast food meal, fits in your palm, and takes out mosquito larvae with almost surgical precision, while leaving every bee, every butterfly, every dragonfly completely untouched. It won't hurt your fish. It won't hurt your birds. It won't hurt your dog, your cat, or your kids. It goes after mosquitoes and nothing else, with a level of accuracy that no spray-on-everything chemical can come close to matching. A single application in the right spots, and your mosquito problem is finished for weeks, while the rest of your backyard ecosystem keeps humming along like nothing happened. I'm Eli Yoder, and I'm going to show you exactly what this is, how it works, and why the pest control industry would really rather you never found out about it. The product is called BTI. Full name: Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. Nobody says that. Everybody just says BTI. You can find it at any garden center, most hardware stores, and all over the internet. It's usually sold under names like Mosquito Dunks or Mosquito Bits. The bits look like little tan granules, kind of like coarse cornmeal, and the dunks are shaped like small floating discs. Different shapes, same active ingredient underneath. Here's what sets BTI apart from every fog, spray, or trap on the market. It isn't a chemical at all. It's a living bacterium, a naturally occurring organism first identified in soil samples in the Negev Desert region back in the mid-1970s. As it grows, this bacterium produces a crystal protein that happens to be lethal to mosquito larvae if they eat it. Once inside a larva's gut, the crystal reacts with the highly alkaline digestive environment there, breaks apart, and punches microscopic holes through the gut lining. The larva stops feeding and dies within a day, sometimes faster. That sounds almost too simple, but the real magic is in how narrow this effect is. That crystal protein only becomes active in an extremely alkaline gut, the kind found in mosquito larvae and a small handful of closely related insects, like black flies and fungus gnats. Honeybees don't have that gut chemistry. Monarchs don't have it. Dragonflies don't have it. Neither do fish, frogs, birds, or mammals of any kind. For every creature except that narrow group, the protein just passes through, completely inert, like a key that only turns one specific lock, and that lock only exists inside a mosquito larva's stomach. If you're finding any of this useful, go ahead and hit subscribe. This channel is built around cheap, practical ways to fix your yard without wrecking it in the process. No sponsorships, no product placements, just what actually works. Now let's talk about why this distinction matters so much, because once you understand what conventional spraying actually does, it's honestly kind of alarming. Most residential mosquito treatment companies rely on a category of chemicals called pyrethroids, things like permethrin, bifenthrin, deltamethrin. These are broad-spectrum insecticides, meaning they're built to kill essentially any insect they touch. When a technician fogs your shrubs, your fence line, your patio furniture, they aren't just targeting the mosquitoes flying around at that moment. They're leaving behind a residue on every treated surface that continues killing insects for days, sometimes weeks afterward. A bee lands on your treated fence post to rest for a second. It dies. A swallowtail brushes against a sprayed leaf on its way to a flower. It dies. A firefly settles onto your treated lawn at dusk. It dies. A ladybug crosses your deck railing. Dead. Even dragonflies, genuinely one of nature's best mosquito hunters, die the moment they land on a treated branch, which means the spray is quietly killing off the predators that would have eaten your mosquitoes at no cost to you at all. This isn't speculation. Researchers have tracked pyrethroid residue turning up inside honeybee hives following residential mosquito treatments in the surrounding area. Bees carry it back on their legs, in the pollen they gather, and it builds up inside the colony over time. Weakened colonies produce fewer eggs. Some collapse entirely. And the homeowner who paid for that spraying rarely connects to the fact that their tomato plants suddenly stopped setting fruit, because there's nothing left nearby to pollinate them. There's a well-documented case from the early 2000s where a wave of migrating monarch butterflies moving through the northern Great Plains flew directly into a cloud of pyrethroid spray that had been applied for mosquito control. Thousands of them died in that single event, one of the most recognizable insect migrations on the continent, taken out as an afterthought. Nobody was trying to kill monarchs. They just happened to be flying through air that had been treated to kill something else. And pyrethroids don't know the difference. And here's the part that should really bother you. These sprays aren't even that good at solving the mosquito problem long term. A female mosquito can lay somewhere around 100 to 300 eggs in a single batch, and those eggs can hatch in under 48 hours given warm enough water. You spray your yard on a Saturday, and by the middle of the following week, a fresh batch of larvae is already growing in whatever puddle nobody bothered to treat. The spray kills the adults that happen to be flying that day. It does nothing to shut down the source. It's the equivalent of mopping up water off the floor while the pipe underneath keeps leaking. It looks like progress, but the actual problem never goes away. BTI flips that whole approach. Instead of attacking adult mosquitoes after the fact, it goes straight to the water where they're born and kills the larvae before they ever get wings. No larvae, no new adults. And because it only works when something eats it out of standing water, it never comes anywhere near a bee or a butterfly in the first place. Pollinators are out visiting flowers. They have zero interest in the stagnant water sitting in your wheelbarrow, and that's exactly the water where BTI does its job. So let's get into how you actually use this, because it's almost stupidly simple. You're going to hear this and assume it can't possibly be enough to solve a real infestation, but the research backs it up again and again. Step 1. Walk your entire property and look for anything holding water for more than a couple of days. The obvious spots are easy: bird baths, plant saucers, unused kiddie pools, old tires, rain barrels. The sneaky spots are what get people: a dip in a downspout extension, a folded tarp with a pocket in it, the bottom of a recycling bin that never fully empties, an overturned wheelbarrow that isn't quite flat against the ground. Mosquitoes don't need a pond to breed. A bottle cap of standing water is genuinely enough for a female to lay a full batch of eggs. Step 2. For anything you can just dump out, dump it. Flip the saucer. Empty the bucket. Poke a drainage hole in that old tire if you're using it for anything. The single most effective mosquito control move available to you costs nothing and isn't a product at all. It's simply removing the water they need to reproduce. No amount of spending fixes a yard that's still handing mosquitoes a free nursery. Step 3. For the water you can't or don't want to get rid of: the bird bath, the rain barrel, the decorative pond, the fountain that isn't currently running. This is where BTI comes in. Sprinkle the granular form directly into the water. That's the entire process. A single cup treats roughly 25 square feet of surface area. A bird bath might only need a spoonful, a rain barrel, maybe a quarter cup, a larger pond, a full cup. The granules float on the surface and release bacteria gradually into the water over the next 1 to 2 weeks, and any larva that feeds in that water afterward doesn't survive. Now here's a technique a lot of people have never heard of, and it might genuinely be the single most useful thing in this whole video. It's sometimes called a mosquito decoy trap, and it works by using the mosquito's own instincts against them. Grab a dark-colored 5-gallon bucket. Dark matters, because mosquitoes are drawn to dark surfaces when they're choosing a place to lay eggs. Fill it about halfway with water, toss in some grass clippings, dead leaves, or straw, and just let it sit uncovered for about 48 hours. During that time, the decomposing plant matter releases carbon dioxide and builds up a scent that female mosquitoes find absolutely irresistible when they're hunting for a place to lay eggs. It's basically the only vacancy sign in town, and every egg-laying female within 100 feet is going to want to check in. After those 2 days, stir in about a quarter cup of BTI granules. If you want to keep debris and curious animals out while still letting mosquitoes reach the water, lay a piece of wire mesh loosely over the top. What you've built at that point is a trap. Mosquitoes arrive to lay eggs. The larvae hatch, the larvae feed on the BTI, and the larvae die, including the ones that would have otherwise bred somewhere you never would have found, like a crack in your driveway or your neighbor's forgotten kiddie pool. Set the bucket in a shaded corner of your yard, ideally 20 or 30 feet from wherever you actually sit outside. Top off the water as it evaporates, and refresh the BTI roughly every 2 weeks. One of these buckets can noticeably cut down the mosquito activity across your entire property. Some people run 2 or 3 for even better coverage. If you're using the dunk version instead of the granules, it's even less effort. Drop 1 straight into any standing water and let it float. It slowly releases BTI for about a month at a time and treats roughly 100 square feet of surface. You can snap it into smaller pieces for smaller containers. A quarter of a dunk will comfortably handle a rain barrel for several weeks. Now, about the safety side of things, because this is where BTI really separates itself from anything else on the market. It's been registered with the EPA since the early 1980s, so we're talking over 4 decades of use and independent study by universities, government agencies, and outside researchers. The World Health Organization has approved it for treating drinking water sources in regions battling malaria. Drinking water. That's the safety bar we're talking about. You could accidentally get a mouthful of the granules, and the worst outcome would be an unpleasant taste, not a health emergency. It's considered non-toxic to humans, pets, and virtually every non-target species. There's also a study out of the French National Beekeeping Association that specifically looked at BTI's effect on honeybee colonies, tracking forager activity, worker mortality, hive behavior, and honey output. The result across the board, no measurable negative impact. That's not a claim from a company trying to sell you the product. That's independent research from beekeepers who had every incentive to find a problem if one existed, and didn't. I know some of you are already thinking about garlic spray, cedar oil, citronella, and all the other natural mosquito repellents lining store shelves, so let's address that honestly. Most of them barely move the needle. Essential oils evaporate within a couple of hours. Garlic spray might push mosquitoes away from a small patch of yard temporarily, but it doesn't kill anything. They just relocate a few feet over. Cedar oil has mild repellent properties, but again, it's short-lived and does nothing about where mosquitoes are actually breeding. And here's something people don't expect. Plenty of natural mosquito products aren't actually safe for pollinators either. Pyrethrin, one of the most common organic insecticides on the market, comes directly from chrysanthemum flowers, and it kills bees just as effectively as any synthetic chemical does. The word natural doesn't automatically mean harmless to everything except mosquitoes. BTI is different, specifically because of its mechanism. It doesn't repel, it doesn't coat surfaces, it doesn't drift through the air. It just sits in water and waits for a mosquito larva to make the mistake of eating it. Nothing else that touches that water is affected at all. Let's talk numbers, because this is where the case really closes itself. A professional mosquito treatment service typically runs somewhere between $75 and $200 per visit, usually recommended every 3 to 4 weeks throughout the warm months. Over a full season, that's somewhere in the range of $500 to $400, and every one of those visits is putting pollinators at risk. A container of BTI granules, by comparison, runs around $8 and will comfortably treat an average residential yard for the entire summer. You apply it yourself in about 15 minutes. $8 against well over $1,000. 15 minutes of your own time against waiting around in a 2-hour service window for a technician who's about to spray poison across your kid's swing set. Precision against carpet bombing your own backyard. It isn't a close comparison. Here's a number that should genuinely irritate you. Residential mosquito control is $1 billion-plus industry in the United States. $1 billion a year spent on a service that kills pollinators as a side effect, provides only temporary relief, and never actually addresses where the mosquitoes are coming from. Meanwhile, the entire market for something like BTI stays tiny by comparison. Because it's inexpensive, because it works too well, and because there's no recurring revenue in a product you buy once and apply yourself. No subscription, no seasonal contract, no technician trying to upsell you the premium tier, which is exactly why most people have never heard about it until a video like this one crosses their feed. Before I wrap this up, let me give you a handful of extra tactics that pair well with BTI, because while it handles the source of the problem, there's more you can do to make your yard hostile to mosquitoes while staying friendly to everything else. First, fans. This sounds almost too basic to work, but mosquitoes are genuinely weak flyers. They struggle in anything above roughly 1 mile an hour of wind, which is barely a breeze at all. A standard box fan pushes air at somewhere between 8 and 12 miles an hour. Set one up near wherever you actually sit outside, your patio table, your porch swing, your hammock, and you create a pocket of air mosquitoes physically can't push through. They'll try, they'll fail, and they'll move on to somewhere else. No chemicals, no residue, barely any cost beyond a few cents of electricity a night. Bees and butterflies, which are far stronger flyers, won't even notice it's there. If you take away one single tip from this video, make it this one. Second, lean into natural predators. Dragonflies are absurdly efficient mosquito hunters, capable of eating dozens to well over 100 mosquitoes in a single day depending on the species, and they hunt adults in midair like tiny fighter jets. Their aquatic young, called nymphs, also eat mosquito larvae underwater, so dragonflies are attacking the problem at both life stages simultaneously, which makes it even more frustrating that standard mosquito sprays kill dragonflies right alongside their prey. You end up removing one of the best mosquito control tools nature has to offer, while paying money for the privilege. Bats deserve a mention too. A single little brown bat, the most common species across North America, can eat close to 1,000 mosquitoes in one night of hunting. One bat, roughly 1,000 mosquitoes every single night. A bat house mounted 12 to 15 feet up on a pole or the side of a garage, facing south or southeast for warmth, will often attract residents on its own within a season or two. They cost around $15 to $25 and last for years. Arguably the best return on investment of anything you can do to your yard. Third, plant with intention. Certain plants repel mosquitoes while actively drawing in pollinators at the same time. Lavender is the classic choice. Bees love it, mosquitoes avoid it. Rosemary does something similar. Catnip has actually outperformed some synthetic repellents in controlled studies, and marigolds push away a wide range of garden pests along with mosquitoes. Cluster these around your patio, deck, or wherever you spend your evenings, and you're building a pollinator garden and a mosquito buffer in the same footprint. Fourth, timing matters if you ever do use any kind of spray, even a plant-based one. Apply it early in the morning or late in the evening, when bees have returned to the hive and butterflies have settled in for the night. Avoid spraying anywhere between roughly 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, when pollinator activity peaks on a warm day, and never spray directly onto flowering plants. Target the shaded, damp spots where mosquitoes rest, not the sunny areas pollinators actually feed in. Fifth, keep the yard itself tidy. Mosquitoes spend their daylight hours resting in tall grass, dense shrubs, and piles of leaf litter. A well-trimmed lawn and cleared-out beds won't eliminate them, but it takes away a lot of their preferred hiding spots. And as a bonus, an open, sunlit yard is exactly the kind of environment pollinators tend to prefer anyway. Bees and butterflies like sun, mosquitoes like shade. Design around that difference and you're working with nature instead of against it. Now zoom out for a second, because there's a bigger picture here worth sitting with. Researchers have been tracking a steep, sustained decline in global insect populations for decades now. Losses in the range of tens of percent across many regions since the 1970s. Pollinators specifically are vanishing at a pace that should concern anyone who eats food, because a huge share of what ends up on your plate depends on them. Apples, almonds, blueberries, squash, cucumbers, none of that reproduces reliably without bees and other pollinating insects doing their job. Ecologists have compared losing insect species one at a time to pulling rivets out of an airplane wing. Pop one or two and the plane still flies fine. Keep going, and at some unknown point, you cross a threshold and the whole structure fails. Nobody can tell you exactly where that line is. But every yard that gets blanket sprayed with pyrethroids is quietly pulling out another rivet. Nobody doing it means any harm. They just want the mosquitoes gone. But the outcome is the same either way. You don't actually have to pick between a mosquito-free yard and a pollinator-friendly one. That's a choice the pest control industry benefits from you believing is real. BDI proves it isn't. Kill the mosquitoes, but keep the bees. $8, 15 minutes, and you're done. 1 cup of BTI granules in every water source on your property. A decoy bucket tucked into a shady corner, a fan running on the patio, a bat house on the garage, some lavender along the deck. That's the entire system, start to finish, for under $30 and under an hour of your time. And what you're left with is a yard where the bees keep working, the butterflies keep drifting through, and you can actually sit outside in the evening without getting eaten alive. Nobody selling you a seasonal spray contract is going to walk you through any of this, because there's no repeat business in a solution that just works. But it isn't complicated, and it isn't a secret anymore. The science on this has been settled for years. It's cheap, it's safe, and it's sitting on a shelf at your local hardware store right now. So here's the challenge. This weekend, grab a container of BTI. Walk your property from corner to corner and find every spot where water is sitting still. Treat it. Set up a decoy bucket in the shade. Give it 2 weeks. Then come back and let me know in the comments whether you're still getting bitten. I'd put money on the answer being no. And while you're out there, Take a second to actually look at what's living in your yard. The bees working through your flower beds, the butterflies passing through, the fireflies lighting up at dusk. None of that is a nuisance. That's the whole ecosystem your yard depends on, and it's worth protecting just as much as your own evenings outside are worth reclaiming. One more thing before you go, because I get asked this constantly in the comments. People want to know if BTI is safe to use around vegetable gardens, and the answer is yes. You can treat a rain barrel you're using to water your tomatoes without worrying about contaminating anything you plan to eat. It's also safe near ponds with ornamental fish or koi, since fish simply don't have the gut chemistry the crystal protein needs to do anything. The only real caution worth mentioning is to store it somewhere dry, since moisture will start breaking down the granules before you ever get them into the water, which shortens how long a container lasts you. People also ask how quickly they should expect results. Realistically, give it about a week. The larvae already in your water sources will start dying within the first day or two. But you're not going to notice a dramatic difference in the adult mosquito population overnight, because there are still adults flying around from batches that hatched before you treated anything. What you're doing is cutting off the supply line. Within a week to 10 days, as those existing adults finish out their natural lifespan, which for a mosquito is usually somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks, and nothing new is replacing them, the population drops off sharply. It's not instant, but it's permanent in a way that spraying never is, because you've actually broken the cycle instead of just knocking down whatever happened to be in the air that afternoon. If this changed the way you think about mosquito control, pass it along to a neighbor. Every yard that switches from chemical fogging to something like BTI is one more small stretch of habitat that pollinators get to keep. And if you want more low-cost, high-impact ways to take care of your yard, subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a lot more of this coming.